What's up? What's up? What's up? Welcome, everybody. Welcome to a Proverb a Day by Pastor Virgil Pickney. I am your host, Pastor Virgil Pickney. And before we get started, as always, what is a proverb? A proverb is practical. It gives advice that is useful in the real world, something that should always be applied. The reader should consider what changes he or she should make in his own life in light of the proverb. A proverb is derived from an astute observation about life, usually works. The creator of Proverbs shows himself very knowledgeable and perceptive, able to see what is generally true and to draw conclusions from it. The author is solemn, and we know the last two books are credited to Agar and Lemuel. And as always, we know that Proverb is known as the Book of Wisdom. So today, we're going to be looking at Proverbs 10 and 19. Proverbs 10 and 19. And I'm going to first read the King James Version of it. Okay, so in the King James, Proverbs 10 and 19 read, "In the multitude of words there wanteth not sin, but he that refrain his lips is wild." I'm going to read the King James Version again. "In the multitude of words there wanteth not sin, but he that refrain his lips is wise." Okay, and then in the HCHB version, the Word of God reads, "When there are many words, sin is unavoidable, but the one who controls his lips is wise." And now I'm going to read that version one more time. "When there are many words, sin is unavoidable. When there are many words, sin is unavoidable. But the one who controls his lips is wise." Okay, so here we see the contrast between one who speaks many words and one who speaks very little. Not only do the one speaks very little, but they control the nature of not just what they speak, but when they speak. Okay. We see here the one who speaks many words, for them, sin is unavoidable. Okay. But let's look at what this sin is considered. In the Hebrew, it did mean sin. So in the Oxford Dictionary, it's an immoral act considered to be a transgression against divine law. So anytime we're talking about divine law and we hear words like transgression, we know that this is dealing with God. So this is something that God is not approved of. Now, this is not to say that one who just speaks and speaks many words, that God don't want us to speak and speak many words. No, that's not what we're saying here. You have to look at the intent of what is being said. Sometimes people will speak just many words just to be speaking and just be rambling on just to be speaking. So God is looking at their intent. So their intent is immoral. Okay, their intent is considered to be something that goes against God's divine nature. Okay, so we're not just saying because you speak and you speak a lot, that God don't want you to speak and not speak a lot. That's not what we're saying. So don't get caught up into that. Okay, we're talking about the intent. So this is somebody that's just babbling, don't have no reason for babbling, and they're just constantly just talking. And in today's world, one who talks a lot and just rambles on. They're the ones that are considered wise. People will look at people like that and say, "Oh man, they're so wise. Listen to all the knowledge that they have." Okay, but God is saying here, hold on, wait, hold on, just hold on. The one that speaks so much and speaks with many words, for them, sin is unavoidable. At some point, the more you speak, you're gonna begin to get yourself caught up. Okay, but the one who speaks minimum words or not as many, people will look at them as, oh, they must not know nothing because they're not saying anything. It's funny how we've gotten in 2022 in this country, and as Christians and just as people, how, we've gotten to this place where humble and meekness is looked at as weakness, and one who's brash and talk a lot and talk with their chest out is considered brave, and that's the ideal thing. But here we're looking at it through the book of Proverbs, and we're looking at it from a wise perspective, that's the total opposite, total different contrary. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at this, and let's break down some of these words. So in the King James, you heard the word wanted, and the word wanted in Hebrew means to stop. Okay, also in the King James version, we had heard the word refraineth, and in Hebrew it means to withhold. Okay, so now let's go back and let's look at this. When there are many words, sin or an immoral act considered to be a transgression against divine law is unavoidable. And this unavoidable in the Oxford Dictionary means not being able to be avoided, prevented, or ignored. And I want to pay attention to the ignored. Okay, let's pay attention to that word ignored. One who speak with many words. In other words, sin is unavoidable to you because God won't ignore your intent. God is not going to ignore that. Though man may ignore it, the person or people that you may be speaking to may ignore it. However, God himself will not ignore it. So it becomes one of those things that just because people may say it's okay, or the world may say that it's practical or okay, doesn't mean that God says that it's okay. And we got to get back to establish a difference between what is man saying okay versus what God is saying okay, especially for the so-called Christian, especially for the believer, especially for you. Now, if you're not a believer, and then then now we just must use wisdom, okay? And I'm giving you wisdom. Book of Proverbs, this is the book of wisdom. But if you are a believer, we shouldn't even be having this conversation about, are we paying attention to what God is saying or man? Or are we following after man or after God? This shouldn't even be part of our conversation. But in 2022, this is greatly amongst our conversation, because we're seeing so many people dibble and dabbling, and we're seeing so much of things being exemplified as okay with God that when you line up biblically will not be okay with God. This is considered a transgression against divine law. Okay. So let's continue on. So when there are many words, sin is avoidable, but the one who controls, and this word control in the Oxford means the ability to restrain one's own emotions or actions. So the one that can control his lips or his speech, or how often he speaks or how much he is speaking. Okay, we want to cover it all. That person is considered wise. That person is considered wise. Total contrary to what the popular belief is. Total contrary to what they're selling us today. One who speaks many words is wise, not the one who controls what he speaks. That person is considered, they must not know nothing. Or that person is considered the weaker of the two. But here we see in this proverb that person is the one that's considered wise. What a contrast, right? What a contrast. So refrain, what it said in the King James, it has said, but he that refraineth his lips. So that word refrain in the Oxford Dictionary means stop oneself from doing something. To stop oneself from doing something. So what are we trying to stop ourselves from doing here? In this particular case, we're talking about speaking many words. In this particular case, we're talking about just one who's speaking many words, one who's rambling. And not only are we speaking many words and we're rambling, but the intent of what we're saying, that's what we're trying to refrain from in this particular passage. Okay, that's what we want to refrain from. It's not about how many words you say. It's not about how many words you say that will make you impactful. It's the impact of what you're actually saying. So that means I can say far more few words, but my words can carry much more impact. God is not looking at the number. God is not looking at how much is being said. You know, we know there's a parable about praying, you know, one who prays and rambles for hours and hours and hours, and somebody that can pray for 30 seconds or 5 minutes, and that prayer could be considered more impactful than the one that rambled on and on and on. But in the natural and to the outside, we may look at the one who rambles. Sometimes we put too much emphasis on things like that when God doesn't even pay attention to that. He's always looking at the heart of matter, and he's always looking at one's intent. Okay, and it will behoove us to do the same thing. To be cool or to be dispassionate was the ideal personality type at a time. To be cool and dispassionate about things, that was considered the ideal personality type. Yahshua himself was the ultimate example of restraint. So when we're talking about this restraint here, for many words, etc., or this proverb, God himself, Yahshua himself, was always the perfect example of that. Okay, so if he was able to obtain it and be able to do it, then that means that we're capable of doing the same thing. Yahshua was the ultimate example of restraint. There is an implied argument here that even if a fool is considered wise when silent, how much more will an intelligent person be respected for restraint? So even a fool is considered wise when he speaks at a minimum. Even a fool. It didn't change the fact that he's still a fool, but he will be considered or looked upon wise. So how much more for a man of wisdom that can speak with restraint? How much more will we be looked upon? Okay. The one who has the ability to restrain his or her own emotion and action in regards to their lips or speech is considered wise, not the one who utters it all. So here we see, remember I've been telling you guys before in other teachings, a lot of times with these proverbs, it gives you two different contrasts. It gives you the A and then there gives you a B. It gives you what it looks like when we're A and what's practical and also what's B. And this is an example of that between one who speaks many words foolishly per se and one who speaks very minimum words with wisdom. But at the end of the day, we just now found out through Proverbs 10:19 which one in the eyes of God is considered wise. It was the one who spoke minimum words. I want to thank you guys for today's teaching. Today we talked about Proverbs 10:19. I pray that it was much of a blessing for you guys as it was for me. As always, we want to try to get a Proverbs in once a day. I will see you guys again, same time, same bat channel. Until then, I love you guys, and you guys be safe out there.